What can you say? Trying to get you to summarize this in a soundbite about the direction of the MCU and kind of your vision going forward. Is there anything you want to clarify?
The Marvels comes out on Friday.
I think it would be interesting to start backwards, and that's what we're going to do, because I think that a lot of fans are really excited about this post-credit scene. It's probably the most hyped up, insane post-credit scene that we've got from Marvel in the past several years. We got the Hercules post-credit with the Thor film and some other things that haven't really paid off yet, and we still don't know how soon this is going to pay off. But how cool was it to see the Beast, guys?
It was pretty cool. I was excited.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, and he was played by Kelsey Grammer too. That's just like a nerd's wet dream. Like he had the lab coat on, the same as the Beast from X-Men animated series.
On that, like, I don't know if you guys heard Kelsey Grammer, like, after the fact. He came out in a video talking about how, like, excited he was to be back as Beast, even if that was it. And he spoke about how important the character was to him. And honestly, that was, like, really nice to see, because a lot of the time it feels like Marvel has kind of become, like, everyone just is excited to work for Marvel because they know they're going to make a ton of money. They know that they're going to become, like, a household name. But, like, they don't really care that much about the character. It feels like a job. And I mean, I feel like that's kind of the vibe with Phase 4 and Phase 5. Like, everyone just kind of feels like they're going through the motions. But like, to hear an actor say, like, yeah, I'm like, I loved playing the character, like that he'd always want to go back. That was nice.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that what makes, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but what makes Iman Vellani so infectious and fun to watch is that very reason. You can tell whether or not you like the character.
She's happy to be there.
Yeah. Whether or not you like the character of Miss Marvel, which she's not my favorite character from the comics, but you can tell that she just loves the opportunity to be there with these actors, and she's so excited and hyped up about playing this character. So I think that's one of the aspects that makes her character so fun and her so fun to watch. But that post-credit scene was absolutely insane. I know, Josh, that the nerd in you was just loving every second of that.
Oh yeah, very much so. I know I've told you before, my wife, that's how I met, seen another movie together, Star Wars, and then when I started talking to her, and she's like, oh, one of my favorite is the cartoon X-Men, and I'm like, this is the girl. So I was very excited, because especially bringing back in X-Men, because I loved that cartoon growing up, and I still, will watch a good cartoon. But I definitely enjoyed that. I love the Kelsey Grammer. I thought it was very well done, and it got me really excited.
What's really funny about that is, like, when that time happened for like the credits popped up, my wife got up and was like, let's go ahead and leave. And I was like, no, Marvel's pretty famous for having post-credit scenes. And then, like, whenever it happened, I was like, wow. So I had to explain to her how it's really getting X-Men into the Marvelverse. I thought it was really cool. And it was kind of funny to explain to her, like, if people are getting up, I was like, oh, they're dumb. Let's go ahead and sit down. Let's wait. Let's watch. Something's going to happen.
It's crazy how people still do that, right? And we also got the inevitable new Avengers angle. And hear me out on this real quick. I'm still not excited about the new Avengers. And never have I been excited about that concept. But the way that this was done in this film, I thought was probably the best way they could have done it. I'm not saying that, the rest of the film was like that. We're starting backwards on this one, but the way they did the new Avengers build up, I thought was really well executed. What did you guys think?
I think it gives them a good opportunity to really make these characters stand out. With the announcement of, like, Marvel Spotlight, like how they're going to be producing Echo under Marvel Spotlight, they're going to be focusing on, like, the more grounded storytelling. It sounds like Marvel is listening to the complaints. They realize that they're not going in that direction, like, that focuses on the characters. They've been focusing a lot more on plot. And, like, while it's fun to see, like, cool CGI stuff smashing into each other, if we don't care about the characters, we don't really care about the story. So absolutely. I think that I'd be more interested to see, like, who else would join. But when it comes to, like, the characters of, like, Miss Marvel and Kate Bishop, they are very similar in the sense of, like, they're like breathing life and into, like, the environments that they're in, and they're like this, like, youthful energy, and that's great. But I think that having them all on screen would essentially force the writers to really make them distinct characters. It'll make them dig into each of these characters. So I hope that that's the direction that they go, but I'm being very optimistic.
Yeah, speaking of plot there, I don't think there was much of a plot here. To be honest with you, I mean, what I saw of the film was pretty much, it was kind of a push for pushing in X-Men as quick as they could. because I think kind of Marvel's on that downhill slope. They're trying to pick it back up.
The Fantastic Four and the X-Men is what they know. All the fans are clamoring to see at this point. I think that they definitely, whether or not that was done last minute or not, I know that there was a lot of last minute editing and chops and cuts and edits of the film. As to what the original cut of the film was and this and that, we don't know. But yeah, I think that they're definitely trying to say like, hey guys, wait, don't leave us yet. We still got
Let's get the cool people in.
on the horizon.
I enjoyed, but I also come from the background of having 3 girls, and I've been really trying to get them in to comics and stuff, just the world, because it's what I love. So, I mean, we started like watching the Marvel Rising where they had the new Avengers. So it was exciting because they also got to see some of that connection, being able, because we watched through the Kamala Khan, all the other stuff, so they've seen it, and then connecting with Marvel Rising and getting to see them actually start a whole the new Avengers, for me, is kind of exciting just because of them.
I actually think the scene also kind of harkened back to Sam L's entrance as.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was
almost like an homage.
Yeah, the whole thing. Hey, I'm starting a band, basically, is what he was saying. I'm starting this group. I haven't watched any of the actual new shows on Disney, so I don't know. The whole Hawkeye thing. I need to go back and watch some of those.
You don't,
but I haven't watched any of those. Oh, I don't. I have heard that I don't, but
Now that we've talked about all the post-credit scenes and everything like that, let's get into the movie a little bit. I'll start things off and say this. I have been a very vocal opponent of Captain Marvel, the first Captain Marvel film. I was not a fan of Brie Larson's performance. I thought that it was just insanely wooden. Someone that just did not show any type of emotion. There was no character flaws with this character. It also didn't help that the way she came across in a lot of the press conferences and, when they were promoting Endgame.
Am I saying that I hate white dudes? No, I'm not.
The film was not terrible, the first Captain Marvel. It was not a terrible film, but I thought the weakest part about the film was her performance and her character. Fast forward to now, and I was really expecting to not like this movie at all. I was thinking it was going to be very, very, very lower tier. The film is still going to be a box office flop. We've already seen some of the lowest MCU numbers ever since the MCU started back in 2008. I mean, this looks like it could possibly be a lower opening weekend than the Incredible Hulk, which is insane.
Yeah, it's confirmed now. They got it lower than Incredible Hulk, The Flash, everything the DCEU's ever put out too. Like
Flash?
It's bad.
I think the biggest issue here is, probably a lot of that with Brie Larson and Captain Marvel in the first film. The first Captain Marvel made a lot of money, but I think that it was because of the era that it was released in. It was sandwiched in between 2 really important Marvel films. Right. It was right before Avengers Endgame, and people felt like they had to watch Captain Marvel, and they kind of did to understand what was happening in Endgame. Here we are now, and it's almost like audiences are at a point where they're just fed up with Disney's BS, for lack of a better term, right? They've given us a lot of subpar stuff, especially on Disney Plus, like Isak alluded to earlier. So the brand, I think, overall is just not where it used to be 5 years ago. The reputation is at a much lower place. And when you give us a film like this with characters that you barely even gave us anything on in WandaVision and in Miss Marvel, top everything off with the cherry on top that is Brie Larson, I just don't think that it's a recipe for success. What do you guys think?
I feel like that before there was this barrier for entry when it came to quality. Before a movie or a series or anything would be made, it had to already be good enough. Since Marvel's grown so much, they lowered that barrier of entry and they just focused on quantity more than anything. That's the result of it. And I think people are frustrated with Marvel because of their response. And the writer strike, the actor strike, and the pandemic, it slowed down really their ability to change any of their plans. They started with these Disney Plus series that were really stagnant, and it's been a bad couple of years at Disney. I think the reason people are so frustrated is because Disney, a lot of the time when they're faced with criticism, before acknowledging that their product is bad, they immediately blame the fans in one way or another. I did a video a couple weeks back where I went through every single excuse that Disney has used to deflect criticism. They've used everything that you could imagine, ableism, racism, sexism, everything except maybe this product just wasn't that good. And I'm not sure if you guys read the Variety article about the MCU.
Yes.
But yeah, so like producers at Marvel, like apparently they've been sharing these same exact complaints about the series that the fans have internally at Marvel. They hear those complaints from the executives, from the producers, and then they turn around and tell their publishing team, oh yeah, put out an article about, it being racism, about the criticisms coming from that place, when they know damn well that it's not. Finally, like I said, with Marvel Spotlight and the direction that they're taking Echo, for example, or the fact that they announced that they threw the entirety of Daredevil away in the trash and they're starting new so that they can, focus on essentially creating a sequel to the Netflix show. And they got the showrunner for Punisher on it. They're going in the direction that the fans want them to go now.
They have John Bernthal in there.
Yeah, but he's gonna be on the show, but
Okay.
the
Cool.
person who is writing the show now is the guy who wrote the Punisher show, and I think that
Okay.
the only reason that the person who did Daredevil isn't coming back is because like 2 weeks before the writer's strike ended, he went like on a tirade on Twitter, essentially like talking about Disney's bad practices, like for example the way that they would renew 3 seasons of a show and then change the name of the show to technically
Yes.
have it be a new show so that they wouldn't be forced to give the actors raises. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're throwing everything away and just get the guy who did Punisher, because it's kind of a bad look for them to hire the Daredevil showrunner after he just dragged them. But I think the frustrations are well placed, and I think that Marvel's finally doing the right thing about them.
Yeah, I think that those series are some of the greatest, other than the films, at that time. Though Daredevil, Punisher, yeah, those, if anybody hasn't watched it, they need to check in and watch those. Those are top of the line right there.
They had their flaws too, though. The Defenders was a very
Bad.
huge letdown.
The Defenders
Yeah,
are
I'm
bad.
not talking about the Defenders.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Daredevil
And
season
Iron
1 and
Fist
2
and the
and
second
Punisher.
season of Jessica Jones. Luke Cage started off really strong, but then the second half of the first
Correct.
season was
Yeah, they got rid of Cottonmouth, and then like it just went downhill from there. Like he was
Yeah.
such a great villain, but I mean, I guess he's gonna play Blade, so it's all right. I have spent like the last 2-3 days arguing with like every person that I know because like I am the only person that I know that really enjoyed the Marvels. And like I'm shocked by that, honestly. Like, because like you said that you didn't like Captain Marvel's character, but the movie was fine. I hated everything about Captain Marvel. Like everything about it, like the plot, the character, all of it, in my opinion, was very dumb. Like it was just not well done. Like they ruined the Skrulls. They're still trying to recover from that. The Marvels, from start to end, I just had fun. Like I hear a lot of people's complaints, and it's not a perfect movie. Like there are 2 things that are silly, objectively silly. Like the storyline with the kittens. I think that like it started off very silly, and it's not even that it was silly, but just the way that it was filmed, it just felt like it was a reshoot. Like it felt like it was filmed on a different day, on a different set for a different movie. I liked how it ended. Like I thought it was funny, right? Like I enjoyed that scene, honestly. I just thought that it started badly. And the scene with when they go to like that singing planet, I enjoyed the beginning of it. I thought it was fine. Like I hear a lot of people hated it. I hear that. I do. But I'm like, you know what? It's silly. It's okay. And the reason that I liked it a lot is because it gave Captain Marvel an opportunity to express emotion, to like be a human being. And that's something that was like
I can see
sorely
that.
missing from the first movie. Like she just acts like a person here. And that's dope. Like that's the kind of thing that I wanted to see. The second that man looked at Miss Marvel and said, use your scarf. And then Miss Marvel started using a scarf to like beat the out of like fully grown adult soldiers. I was like, are you serious? Like, okay, yeah, like that's just stupid to me. Like, why'd you have to do that? Like, it was almost solid, then it wasn't. But like, other than that, oh, also Nick Fury. I love Nick Fury. Love Samuel L. Jackson. I didn't like him in this movie. I don't understand the purpose that he serves. Right? Like he started off as like this bad spy who's like stands up for the Avengers against whoever, and like he's behind things. Like he was this very cool dude. And like in this movie, he's like a witty grandpa, right? Like he's kind of just like dropping one-liners here and there.
Black girl magic.
I agree with Isak though. I half enjoyed the first movie over this movie, and I really did like this movie a lot, right? But I felt like it was very predictable. Me and my wife were actually talking about it afterwards, and I was like, it's like, yeah, like you knew what was kind of gonna happen. Like you knew obviously they're gonna survive, they're gonna find a way off the escape pod, they're gonna you knew that they're going to be the villain at the end, and they're going to complete the whole harem circle, of they had this issue, they did this issue, and next thing you know, they go and retribute somehow, right? I just feel like the buildup could have been a little better. I feel like at the end, I guess we're not spoiler worthy here. I feel like that could have like showed more emotion. I feel like it just kind of happened. It could have been a better buildup, there could have been like a scene where she comes in, she like looks at them a little bit more, and then she, you know, goes in with like a build up, like with a riser or something. I just felt like the editing was very crappy. I honestly love the little funny scenes they did for character break moments. There was a lot of times when like, and I agree with Isak on how Nick Fury really didn't serve a purpose. He didn't really like, he feel like he's just there to be there because they know he's a facilitator. And are they going to relate him to the Skrulls in some of these movies or not? Right? We don't really know that, and that kind of bugs the crap out of me personally. I was like, you know, they have a connection. Their whole planet just got warped, right? And all their oxygen sucked out. Like, you feel like he would be more involvement. There would be more connections to that. And I feel like there probably was some things filmed like that. They were just very lazy in post to connect all these things together.
On that note, with Nick Fury and the Skrulls, I just can't see how it makes sense, right? Like, how can Secret Invasion and Miss Marvel exist in like the same universe, right? Like, the entire plot of Secret Invasion is that Nick Fury, quote unquote, tries to find the Skrulls a planet, but he can't find them a planet because one just doesn't exist. Then we find out that Nick Fury just stopped trying at a certain point, and just he's kind of been taking advantage of the Skrulls as his, like, you know, little spy agency. The Skrulls' entire motivation is, wow, Nick Fury promised us a planet and he hasn't found one, therefore we're gonna take over Earth. Nick Fury sucks. In this movie, they go to the Skrull planet. And they're like,
hey,
have
a whole planet.
The Skrull planet's destroyed. Oh no! And just pretend Secret Invasion didn't happen. If you just pretend it didn't happen, you can enjoy this movie for what it is. But like, think about that. There are just so many inconsistencies that it just breaks the canon.
It bugged me, honestly. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, part of my soul was like, did I just like waste my time watching Secret Invasion for it to be some like? I wish they would like say, hey, this really didn't happen in this timeline or this universe. You know, like that's a different reality. Like, okay, I can accept that. But like a lot of like the connections and like his character development, he went back to just a broke old man with no urgency. And I get he has to kind of be there to serve a purpose, right, for the storyline. I just felt like there's a lot of connections, a lot of like plot twisting, a lot of character development that could have happened in this that just really didn't happen. It bugs me because I love character development. Like, we're gonna build up a moment, have like a riser of some sort. I want some character development there. And I was a little confused a little bit. Like, who the heck is this? I was like, oh, she saved Jersey City. Maybe I didn't watch that one. You know, I was like,
nobody watched that, so don't feel bad. I think that part of that is due to some of the projects having to be shuffled, you know, the movies and the shows.
Kind of like how they did all those like 54 movies, right? They had them all planned out to all go out in certain areas during COVID.
Yeah, COVID had a big part to play. And then also recently, like Isak said earlier, the strikes, right? So a lot of things have been shuffled around. As far as what you mentioned earlier about the singing planet, I wasn't a big fan of it, but it wasn't something that just ruined the entire movie for me. I didn't think it was awful, but I also didn't, you know, love it. So I'm just kind of somewhere in the middle when it comes to that. As far as the humanization of Brie Larson and Captain Marvel, I will agree to an extent. I think that we did see more emotion from her. We did see a more likable character. You know,
I liked her a lot in this movie, honestly. Like, I like the main trio.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but I would say that I liked her a whole lot more than what we saw from the first Captain Marvel film. So we got to see a little bit more from her. And it was also an interesting concept how, you know, it was almost like she was more of the villain of this movie as opposed to Dar-Benn. She went to this planet and, you know, of course, the reason she decided to destroy the Supreme Intelligence, you know, from the first film was because it was something that ruined her life in a lot of ways. So she was like, screw them and screw that. I'm going to go to that planet and destroy that Supreme Intelligence. But there was a lot of consequences from her doing that. And also seeing the perspective of Dar-Benn, you know, when she was younger, seeing the Annihilator come to her planet and destroy this and it causing so many consequences for them as a people, I thought was an interesting concept. Yeah, I didn't hate Dar-Benn like a lot of people did, but I just also thought she was incredibly bland. Just as bland as the Dark Elves from, you know, Thor Dark World. It's not a villain that's just awful, but it's just a villain that's just kind of
I think we're going to find out that with this movie, there were a ton of reshoots. It's like an hour and a half? Like, typically they're like 2 hours. I think this movie was reshot to hell and edited down like crazy. One scene that looked like it was added in is that like emotional moment between like Monica, Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel, where like, you know, they crash land after they save the Skrulls or save as many Skrulls as they can. There's like a moment of conversation between Monica and Captain Marvel, that is the approach that they went in this movie. Whereas in the first movie, they went with the Miss Marvel approach. Like we see throughout this movie how Miss Marvel sees Captain Marvel not as a person, but as this like perfect superhero. You know, like this.
Yeah.
She didn't really understand Captain Marvel as a human being. That was how they approached the first movie. They didn't approach Captain Marvel as a human being. They approached her as like, oh look, she's super powerful and like strong and she can do anything and she's the strongest. And that was Miss Marvel's like immature perspective. Whereas this movie takes like a more nuanced like approach where she's away because she feels guilty. Like, and I love that explanation, right? Because I didn't vibe with the idea that Captain Marvel is just like not on Earth because she protects space. Like that was always dumb to me. Like it just felt contrived, you know. But here it reminds me of like I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with like Jon Stewart in the comics, but like this guilt that is carried, you know, over the accidental annihilation of a planet. Like it gives so much depth. Her reasoning for not coming back, it makes sense. I like that a lot. I did.
So was the whole Annihilator thing and all that, was that in the first movie? Because I seem to have forgotten, I guess, that.
No.
What I'm saying is actually, when I look at the whole movie, I think what we have here is 3 films that were pieced together. Really, Brie deserved a full movie by herself, focusing on that, her story. I think what happened here, you know, with the studio and everything, they said, oh, I don't think all 3 of these girls can really carry a movie, their own separate movies by themselves. Ultimately, they went with this kind of piecemeal type thing. There were some good scenes where, you know, they really, like you said, Jonathan, humanized Captain Marvel. I actually even like some of the scenes on the spaceship. Well, first of all, you know, I like the whole tank top thing. She was really going out there for the 40-year-old men, you know. I think she was really trying to bring us back. But at the same time, I think those were kind of humanized. She showed a little bit of vulnerability there to where, you know, you kind of like Isak was saying, she wasn't just this super awesome superhero all the time. You know, she did have her human side and, you know, where she has to reflect. She has these weaknesses. I did enjoy those also, but that's kind of what I've seen. I wish we could have saw more of her story instead of just these, you know, a little bit. We were told a lot of her story, just told. We didn't see a whole lot of it. I did this, I did that. Like the whole Annihilator thing, I didn't even, you know, I didn't even know anything about it until like right at the end.
Annihilator. I don't like that name.
Okay,
well, I kind of
so
like that
that
build-up though, right? Because like the
Yeah.
whole movie, they're like every time they mention like Captain Marvel, they call her the Annihilator, and like there's like a genuine fear. Like this is like the supervillain, and she's like, no, we got to start
Correct.
now, like the And then when we find out why, like I feel like that was a satisfying reveal. I have a question though. Yeah, I get the natural resources being gone. I get that. But like, what did they do to their son exactly? Like, how could
Yeah,
they?
I don't-
And like, why would they have done that to their son? They're like, oh, because of Captain Marvel, there was a civil war. Because of the civil war, no more resources and no more son. I get how one of those things happened, and I can't even begin to find like a rational explanation for why anyone in a civil war would be like, you know what? I'm going to blow up the sun. I'm going to make the sun not work anymore. Or like how that would even happen.
They said in the film that was kind of one of the consequences from her destroying the Supreme Intelligence. A lot of it spanned from that. But like you said, it was very vague. So I don't know that for sure, but I think that's what they were trying to say in the movie.
I don't know. Like in the first movie, they established the Supreme Intelligence, but they never show us the Supreme Intelligence. They show us like, what's that old white lady's name? Like the I think so. Yeah. Like, it was like the gender swap, like Marvel, and they're like, oh, like they find out that the Kree are run by this AI, and they've just been oppressing everyone, and they're not like actual heroes; they're the villains. And then she stops that. I don't know how that translates to like sun no more. You know, I don't know. I just feel like they needed.
Maybe it was just kind of like an atomic bomb type thing, and when it blew up, you know, those little pieces floated up in the sky and caused the sun to malfunction. I don't know.
I can say
I'm trying to make it up, man.
I agree with that, and it's nice to hear because there were some things I thought, did I miss something? I mean, I agree with that. It was some of that was a little confusing, and then also, yeah, the Secret Wars, because I got through watching that, and I was in the same spot where I'm like, wait a minute, he couldn't find him on the planet, and I'm like, what am I missing? Am I missing some movie that something happened? Because the only thing he really did, I think he shot somebody once, Nick Fury. And so, yeah, I agree that it was kind of like he stood back. Overall, I did enjoy it as well. I heard a lot of you say you still enjoyed it. I did. Like I said, being a father, I also enjoyed it through my girls because my girls, absolutely, 2 of them were like on the edges of their seat when the cat started eating people. And
Yeah, I love that.
That was terrifying.
you see that, like looking over me. And so it was kind of exciting to see them get excited about it. But yeah, I liked it because I did love Miss Marvel as well, like the TV show. And I like that whole dynamic of the worshiping Captain Marvel and then getting to see that she's human. I thought that was really great.
Correct. Yeah, that was.
I mean, it brings it back to Peter Parker, where you have.
Yep, 100%. It's.
I mean, you get to realize, hey, they're human. They mess up, and you get to see that side. So I like that humanization of. And then also, I'm a huge Monica Rambeau because I'm very old school. And the first time I saw Captain Marvel was in the old Secret Wars. I remember the first time Captain Marvel when it came and they're showing previews, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought Captain Marvel was black. I thought, wait, where am I? And I'm like trying to think. I'm looking back at my old comics, and I'm like, wait. And then I get to see the whole Monica Rambeau in the background on the first one, and I'm like, okay, so they are going to bring that in, but it kind of threw me. But then I was excited to get to see that and get to see her part in that from my old comic days of Secret Wars.
I think ultimately I agree with you. I really enjoyed the movie. Obviously, the main focus of this movie, of the Marvels, was the character development of Captain Marvel. Like, that's pretty much the only story that got told, if I'm being honest with anybody. But there was a lot of whys. I feel like they did have the reason for the whys, like, pieced in there. But I do agree that they kind of took pieces from like other movies that are potentially were supposed to go out, and they just slapped it into this movie. They kind of give it some basic backbone, but still leaves like people that care about the story. Because not everybody watches these movies, right? They care about the actual character development stories. Personally, like, I think even my wife, before I taught her about content creation, she never like really paid attention to that kind of stuff. Like, what's the character buildup? Like, what's this? Was that edited well? Like, did they have no emotion here? Like, that scene was really boring. The villain, which actually was just somebody acting in retribution the whole entire time throughout this film, because she was salty of what happened. Was like a zombie personified in like human form. It was like there was no emotion there, which is crazy because that's kind of how Captain Marvel was in the previous movie, right? As the hero doing everything. So I found it very interesting, but I did like it a lot.
I mean, honestly, on that point, like, I hear that a lot, and I hear like a lot of criticism about Darben. I liked her a lot as a villain, honestly.
She wasn't bad.
Like,
she wasn't as bad as everyone makes her out to be.
Like, MCU villains, like great ones, maybe like Loki, Thanos. That's really it, though, right? Like, I feel like when we compare her to the other MCU villains, I'd give her like an A, right? Not like an S tier, but like an A tier. Like, I liked her motivations a lot. They made sense, and it was something about her first scene, the way that she spoke the lines. It just felt very commanding, and it was very matter of fact. I like that she was coming from like a rational place, because at first she did try to broker peace with the Skrulls, like to build something with them, and then she was attacked by Captain Marvel. I hate scenes in movies or TV shows where like simply speaking up would solve the problem. I don't know why the Skrull King wasn't like, actually, no, we didn't. He was just standing there as she falsely accused them of like hiring Captain Marvel to attack. That was dumb to me, but I liked her a lot. I hear a lot of people calling her like Ronan the Accuser, like a lame Ronan the Accuser. I don't get the Ronan the Accuser hype. I think that she's like significantly better than Ronan the Accuser. Ronan's motivation was work for Thanos. That's it. Get Power Stone, work for Thanos.
Speaking of the Power Stone and the hammer, this was a major inconsistency in my opinion. Why did the hammer, if the Infinity Stones are supposedly destroyed, gone forever, why did that hammer still seem like it had that Power Stone in there?
So the hammer itself is what's called like a heavenly weapon, I think. I think that's what it's called in the movies. Like the hammer itself, the reason Ronan used it is because it has the ability to absorb like an almost infinite amount of energy and then like release it and use it, right? Like Ronan used it, and he used the Power Stone to like conduct power into it. And in this movie, she used the bracelet to conduct power into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Why didn't Miss Marvel get both bangles at the end? Why did the Captain Marvel have to take one? I mean,
I think the reason that Captain Marvel has it is because when they make the Young Avengers movie, like Miss Marvel, she would be too powerful for like any threat that like Kate Bishop has to face, so like they have to, like, I feel like they had to depower her a little bit so that like they're all relative, kind of like Avengers 1, where like they were realistically powerful. Like in Avengers 1, it's like, okay, this is superhero stuff, but it's not like crazy, and then by the time we get to like Endgame, it's like Ant-Man is like a giant just running around and like Spider-Man swinging.
So basically, it wasn't really a story thing. It was more of a, kind of a
yeah. I'm sure they'll like figure out a way to put it into the story. They'll retcon it.
Yeah.
I was also curious because I thought that the bangle is what gave Miss Marvel her powers. Period.
At the end of Miss Marvel, I am so glad that her friend is not in this movie because I did not like her friend. I actually came on here to do the Miss Marvel review, right?
Yeah, that was last year.
Like I liked the family dynamic so much, and I liked her as a character. I thought everything else sucked. Like the villain was bad. The two villain groups were bad. Like the plot was weird and disconjointed. Like it was like they were doing two things at the same time. It was like that organization that like keeps superheroes in check was one villain, and then like the people from an alternate dimension that is literally never brought up again are the other villains. It was just nonsense. She had a friend throughout the whole show who was like the guy in the chair. I don't like him because he's a high school student and they make it the least believable that he would be able to get the answers to the things that he gets the answers to. Peter Parker, it's like, he's a genius. When it comes to like Ant-Man's daughter, like she made that thing. I thought that was a bit ridiculous, but she's using the technology of who is essentially her grandma and grandpa. Like she had like ridiculously intelligent scientists help her with this thing. At the end of Miss Marvel, he basically gets a sample of her blood and he's like, oh, this bangle, power doesn't come from the bangle unlocked like a mutant gene like inside of you. So like Miss Marvel is technically like the first MCU mutant, but they kind of like shoehorn that in towards the end, which doesn't really make much sense. Like they essentially gave her the Inhumans origin. She got the thing and a weird thing came from the thing that she got, and then she got powers from it, but they just kind of threw the Inhumans concept in the garbage.
I'm glad you brought that up because you reminded me. That was the reason she had powers was they played that little X-Men theme there.
Oh, and okay, wait, but the end credits scene, I forgot to mention it earlier. Like, I don't know if y'all noticed it, but like it's a completely new theme. They combined the X-Men 2 theme with the Days of Future Past theme. It was so good. I don't know if anyone's like talked about it anywhere, but like I've like rewatched it a couple times and then I looked in the credits and like both are sourced there. And I hope they run with that theme for the X-Men moving forward.
That's very interesting. Guys, if you had to break it down and if you had to give this film a rating on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being awful, unwatchable, I never want to see it again, and 10 being perfect in every way possible, where would you rank it? We'll start off with you, Mr. Jonathan.
Well, I would say I would give it a 6. I enjoyed it as far as the ride, everything, but like I said, I just feel that it was kind of piecemealed. I give it a 6 because I think the girls, I think Samuel, all of them, I think they were giving it their all. So I give it one more point. I was thinking maybe 5, but I say around 6. I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. It's been a while since I went to the movies and watched anything, so I don't think it was just super great, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you, Jonathan. I gave it a 6. And those of you that don't know, I have a list in my phone that I have to kind of compare every movie, to every other superhero movie. But whenever I was looking at my list in the 6 region there, I had movies like Iron Man 3, The Dark Knight Rises, and I felt like the Marvels fit in a lower tier in that 6 range.
Like The Dark Knight Rises is a little low.
Well, a lot of people think that, but I also was very disappointed with The Dark Knight Rises, but that's a whole nother debate.
No, that's true. No, I can understand what this movie features. Some of the best action sequences in the MCU that I've seen since like Winter Soldier, right? Like the way that they implemented like the fact that they were switching back and forth. Like I was actually like at the edge of my seat, like genuinely excited to see how this fight would go down, right? Like when we saw like Captain Marvel like switch with Monica, and like I was like very into it, and it was funny because like I caught myself very into it, and I was like, damn, they got me.
I did like that first scene. Maybe it was just because kind of my ADHD brain was kind of kicking in, and Missy was dropping it. Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta, rat-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. I was going with it, man. And then they were doing their little flip and blip and all that. Yeah, so I like that. I wish we could have kind of seen, maybe they would have cranked that back up at the end. Saw them actually kind of using the powers a little bit more, got Missy back at the end and then dropped that again. And then
like I was saying, guys, I was literally just about to say that. It's like you read my mind, Isak, and then you just said it before I could say it. I was really happy with the fight choreography. That's something that means a lot to me. Because when I think of movies like Civil War and when I think of movies like the first Avengers, the reason they're ranked so high in my rankings is because of the super well choreographed fights. So yes, if this film had anything going for it, it was A, Iman Vellani and her infectious personality, and B, really surprisingly good choreographed fight sequences. I gave it a 6 as well. What do you think, Mr. Esau? What did you rate this film?
Honestly, I gave it like an 8, right? Like I enjoyed it a lot, like a lot more than I would enjoy it. And I think that like a lot of that comes from the fact that this movie addressed like almost all of my complaints about the first movie. Like I said, I didn't like Samuel L. Jackson a lot in this movie. I like unfortunately love Samuel L. Jackson. I feel like his age is starting to show. Like, you know, there were some scenes where he was like running around and he was like, you know, like it's just you don't
He's
have
up
to be an
there.
action star anymore. You're 76, you know, like you don't have to do that anymore. You could just, you know, be the guy that sits in the chair. And while I didn't enjoy his performance that much, of the funniest joke, and there was a lot of funny jokes in the movie. For some reason, I was like laughing very hard at that scene where
Black girl magic.
you said it, Iman Vellani more or less carried. Like she brought a lot of the like glue. I feel like Monica Rambeau was underutilized. They could have given her more to do. A lot of the time she was just kind of there and then she sacrifices herself. I hope that this leads into like a solo series where we get more of her character and it could be set in like that X-Men universe, have that be the first step in. Like I said, I really like Captain Marvel's character now. Like I liked it. I hope that they keep going in this direction. And honestly, I feel like we should reward this kind of like change. I don't understand the people saying that it's like the worst Marvel movie ever. Those are like, I've seen a lot of reviews like that, essentially saying that this is like the most garbage thing that they've ever watched. I just can't bring myself to understand.
I kind of understand both arguments there, but it is pretty low when it comes to the MCU spectrum. My lowest rated MCU film is The Eternals, I think. It's a 5.5 or 5, somewhere in that ballpark. And that's still not a terrible film, but 5 for an MCU film is pretty low. So
I'll do a 7.5, actually, 7.5.
there you go. So, Josh, what do you think, man? What did you rate it?
Well, thank you, Isak, because I actually was going to jump higher, and I felt kind of alone because I did. I was in the 7, almost 8, just because I really did enjoy. So I'm going to say 7, but I did enjoy like all the stuff we've been talking about, just the fight scenes. I like even the emotional side. Maybe I'm just getting old and more emotional in my age. But also, like I said, too, dealing with my daughters, I had two, like I said, on the edge of their seats, and I'm just excited that they're getting to enjoy this. And I enjoyed the movie. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of things that didn't make sense, that kind of I wasn't connecting, thought I'd missed some stuff. And there were a few things that I didn't like, but overall, I loved the movie and I really enjoyed it. And yes, I'm right there with Iman Vellani. I love her character. I loved Miss Marvel, and so I really enjoyed that.
Like honestly, I know like the average rating for this movie right now is what, like a 6.3, but I mean I would have to give it a higher rating too. I think 7.2 in my opinion. I feel like it had so much potential with who was in the movie to kind of piece together some things. I feel like it was very short, and I think given another like 45 minutes to be a traditional like longer Disney movie, you know, for Marvel, it could have been like the dynamic could have been a lot better. I know I really didn't like, you know, the villain. Like I wouldn't say I didn't like. I would rate the villain probably like a B, right, in this movie. I know Isak said an A, and the reason is like really for me, it's not like being emotional or being emotionless. Even though there was some back character development as the villain, as like the main reason why they're doing a lot of this stuff, there could have been more to it. You know, like they kind of went to like I'm not too well on like the names, like the water planet, right? And that was just kind of seemed like thing that was kind of like pieced in there. There could have been a little more to that, you know, they kind of like showed like why she's doing it, what they're doing, why did the sun, like why do they need natural resource, and they kind of like built her arc out a little bit better as the villain in the movie. Like I 100% agree with the motive and why things are done. You know, it's like revenge sake for what happened, and I love that. I love that about the character development. For me, there just needed to be a little bit more there, but I love the fight scenes. I love the action scenes. I feel like at the end, it could have been a little bit better with the action scenes. I would have loved to see how, you know, the fight scene would have happened at the end if they would have pushed more towards that. I was actually really anticipating it because how the whole movie was so good with everybody fighting, and at the end, you're like, oh man, that was it.
The reason I enjoyed how quick it ended, like towards the end, is because like throughout the movie, Captain Marvel is the Annihilator. The entire army is scared of her for a reason. The only reason that like Dar-Ben really gets a W at any point is because they're switching and because they haven't mastered that, right? So like
true.
when they spend the time like training to master that, they take her out very quick. And it was what, like a minute and a half, a 2-minute fight. They just 3v1'd her so aggressively and like with such precision that I was like, all right, I mean, go for it.
Yeah, I love
I
it.
do hear you though. Like they could have just given her a half an hour of backstory.
Honestly, if we had more of the why to all those things we've talked about previously, dude, it's honestly a solid 8 because I love the humor they put in there. For me, be a humor in a movie and like making you a little more emotionally attached, right, is awesome. Building out like she doesn't have to show emotion again. I know it sounded like before, like I said that she did, but if she's gonna be that gloomy presence, right, make more ominous presence to it. Make more rising music to it. The background music, honestly, if I was going to give, like, I'm big on background music, I would give it like a 6.5, and that could have made this movie a little more emotional. That gives you those goosebumps that you see in a lot of the other Marvel movies. I noticed a lot of the post issues. I even noticed some edit flaws in the video when I was watching the movie, you know, what they could have done. And that's the reason it's not high for me. But overall, I really did enjoy the movie. So I'm going to give it like a 7.2.
Well, guys, I appreciate you joining me for this episode of Comic Book Cinema. Make sure to check us out on the other socials. Also, check out W. Franken, ESOC on their other socials. Until next time, guys, have a good one.